All right. Good morning, everyone. Or I'm sorry, howdy. Say howdy. I think you've gotten experience with howdy now. You've obviously alumni, so had experience with howdy. Thank you all for joining us today for the opening session of the Creative Care Conference. I wanted to start by thanking some of my collaborators. I was leaving voicemails. I sort of started this as a project about a year ago when several students had come to me who were looking to apply their creative activities toward what I started calling kind of an audience of one. They wanted to touch people individually, but they weren't quite sure how to apply those skills. I had a background in music cognition and I'd studied music therapy, and so I started working with some students through directed studies. That developed into a program with Monica Dingra, who is now an alumni of the neuroscience department, who introduced me to Anicia Palmer, and a broader network with Houston Methodist and others. I was approached by Hor-Young and the Institute for Applied Creativity, and have been working with Anne, where is Anne? Not here yet, for the last year and a half to put this on. We also been working with Chris Bergeron. Thank you, Shipra, for all of your help. Daria Dega, who's going to be hosting our events on Saturday, and Kaylee Yu, who made this beautiful slideshow and our website. The original title for this workshop was Performing Pain, and that has a nice alliterative, poetic lilt to it. But there was a specific purpose for that, which was that in Elaine Scarry's philosophical work on pain, she describes it as specifically, when you are experiencing pain, it is the most real thing in the world. When you are trying to communicate that pain to someone else, it is the most difficult thing. Pain destroys language, it destroys creative expression to a certain extent. They're completely incompatible. And the way that she puts it is that when you are experiencing pain, you understand certainty. When someone else is experiencing pain, you understand doubt. And I wanted to create a space in which people could share their creative arts, whether they were coming from a therapeutic context or from an artistic context, to try to communicate about these spaces. That was a much more dour title. Thank you, Hor-Young, for the new title of Creative Care. I did not want to focus on the negatives so much, but that was a very helpful corrective. So today we are going to have a variety of, actually I will give you our brief schedule after we hear from the Dean of our college, Tim McLaughlin, who's going to speak with us a little bit about the emerging technologies and things we're doing in the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Howdy. Howdy. So I'm Tim McLaughlin. I'm the Dean of the College of Performance, Visualization, and Fine Arts. I appreciate the invitation to be here. And in particular, I appreciate what this conference is kicking off. So I believe that this initiative will become one of the pillars of the college. I think it's that significant. It plays a role that is important from a dean's perspective. If you think about the things that a dean really is interested in, it's those things that can span the college and lift us up in terms of recognition, so that those around us at the university, those who see us in the state, those who see us across the country say, hey, look what's happening there. And creative practice spans the college, and this initiative spans the creative practices. So that really excites me. Also, like the way it leans into some of the things I know about Texas A&M, the things I know about where we are right now. So this building, how many of you know who designed this building? Anybody? I know it's a bit of weird trivia, right? A fellow by the name of Jack Yardley designed the building, an Aggie, working at a firm based out of Dallas called HKS. HKS is primarily known for healthcare design. So they design hospitals. A big emphasis in the College of Architecture, which is where visualization came out of originally, was in healthcare design. And so I have this history kind of built into me of thinking about things that have been part of my environment when I was a student here, which is we care about the way that our environment contributes to patient care, patient outcomes, and general well-being. In fact, there's a Center for Health Systems and Design in the College of Architecture. And I just feel like that fits with where the university places itself as a land-grant university serving the state, where in this state, there's such a population that's large, that's growing, and of need. And we have need in healthcare, and we have need in well-being. We as a college and we as a university have a commitment to the needs of the state, and that commitment is to educating our young people and contributing to the well-being of the state. So what are we doing? We're learning how to help others. We're learning one of those Aggie values that is service and service to others, and teaching people how to take care of themselves and teaching people how to engage with the arts for long-term well-being or acute well-being is critical, and that's a role we play. And I think because of the collection of disciplines we have in the college, because of the history of Texas A&M and its mission, I can't see a better seating for what we're doing. That's why I'm so, I think so favorably and such a big fan of this initiative. Now we're moving forward with some very concrete things that the students can engage in. We expect that in the fall, next fall of 2026, we'll have a minor in arts and health. And we expect that to be appealing to all the students in the college and all the students across the university. And it's a first way of really making things concrete for students, and concrete in ways that they can think about what they're learning and then how they can apply that to what they do after they graduate. So this event, particularly with the speakers, the level of speakers and guests we have here, and all of the classroom connections that are going on, I don't think the schedule and the guests could have been arranged any better. So thank you for everybody who helped put it together, and thank you for the invitation to be here.
So, in a few minutes, we're going to get started with our first panel, but I wanted to give you a little bit of detail on what else is going on today. So our first event for today, we're going to have a 30-minute panel with introductions from each of our workshop panelists. Then we're going to be breaking for a student workshop at roughly 10:15 in 3 different rooms. And each of the panelists will give us an introduction to their work, their background, their circuitous career paths, and then take students to those spaces to run them through some of their techniques. I've already seen some of Anicia's yesterday, and then we'll be splitting off for class visits. This at 11:30, right, Horiyoung, will be our 11:15 will be our keynote.
Oh, sorry, 11:30 is the keynote, sorry.
Yeah, okay, 11:30 will be our keynote, and then followed by our faculty panel. And I'm completely blanking what's happening later this afternoon. I think that's it in terms of our main programming for today. Right. Yeah. So then tomorrow we're going to be having the same setup in the same room here. We're going to be focusing on our performing pain panel, which will have practitioners from professional wrestling, fight choreography, and intimacy coordination to do a similar introductory panel and then a series of workshops on those practices. We're going to be having a lot of students joining us over the next couple of days. If you would like to connect with any of the panelists or our faculty or our committee, please see our website at creativecares.info. And now I will bring up our guests, Anicia, Kayla, and Liz. So we have 1 minute before we have to start. So I wanna ask everybody a question.
Okay.
Okay. Specifically, how very broadly, how do you see your creative and your therapeutic work in inflecting each other? Like in the way that you learn those skills, in the way that you communicate them to others. We'll talk about the sort of the mechanics and the specifics of
So there's no amplification.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
need the voice.
Hello.
I think that's for the recording.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's for the recording. I see. Okay. All right. I will project. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of the mechanics and techniques, but kind of broadly speaking, what is the relationship between your creative practice and your therapeutic practice in terms of how you sort of like conceptualize that? Big question, but we'll start. Thank you. Anyone go first?
I can go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So my background is in visual arts, painting and sculpture.
Okay.
And after about a decade of doing that, realized that I wanted to have a broader impact in the world, and that's when I became an art therapist. It's been for me a way to continue my own visual arts practice, and really invite others to kind of like recognize the artist and the creativity that lives within them, and use that as a path for self-development and healing.
I think in a very similar vein, I don't really know how to separate art from the therapeutic, and so all of my art is kind of retelling the stories that I've experienced in different ways and metaphorical ways. And so same thing with therapy, like therapy is just a story that they're telling me, and I get a chance to kind of be a part of that with them. And so same with Dungeons and Dragons therapy, it's just a blending of all of those wonderful things that I get to experience on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Anicia Palmer, and I am a board-certified music therapist. And when I think about what I do, I am a trained musician, and I spent much of my career in education. And rather than being so involved with curriculum, I was more concerned with supporting little humans. And that is one of the things that really developed my interest in the idea of using music as a therapeutic tool versus as a teaching element. So basically, it was a really natural transition for me because I felt like I was doing a lot more therapeutic work before I had the knowledge and equipment to be able to do this profession. And now it's just more of the same with bigger people.
Thank you. Thank you all. And I realize I did bring you up here. Okay.
Just keep checking.
Hello.
This microphone is just right.
Okay, all right. Let's have it. There we go. Okay, perfect. I called you up a little bit too early, so go ahead and go sit back down. And Liz, you're going to be the first presentation.
All
so
right.
we have a 10-minute presentation from each panelist, and then we'll have a time for questions right before our workshop. There is not, but I can click for you.
Okay, awesome. So I have probably a 1-hour presentation that I'm going to just try to condense. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to condense that into 10 minutes. Thank you. So I always explain art therapy to people as art therapy is the ocean as well as the boat. So it's the ocean in terms of art materials and process can help circumnavigate the rational mind and help you dive down into the unconscious and bring treasure up to the surface in a way that we can view it from different angles and see the solutions to issues. It's the boat in that as a trauma processing tool, if you experience your life as kind of like overwhelming symptoms, art therapy can create this pleasurable distraction and nervous system regulator that can feel like a respite from the chaos of feeling your feelings. So art therapy for emotional regulation. utilizing Bruce Perry's 6 R's of calming the nervous system, using a lot of tools that are relational, relevant, repetitive, rewarding, rhythmic, and respectful. You can click. I do a lot of, in early sessions with clients, and you can play the video, a lot of Zen doodling. So these are things that can really focus on the breath, focus on the body, and create visual, physical anchoring that allows clients to tolerate difficult material that we're talking about by kind of creating this third presence in the room, something to focus on, and something to absorb some of that stress. Yeah, I use this as a mindfulness tool to help clients process as we're chatting. So this is kind of like art therapy as the boat. You can move on to the next one. I'm just going to move very quickly. Art therapy for accessing the unconscious. So this is one that I use early, almost as a diagnostic tool. It's a scribble drawing, and you can go to the next. Oh, sorry, never mind. So no, keep going. I'm sorry. I had planned for this really long presentation. Okay, go ahead and play it. This is a projective drawing tool, so it's kind of creating a scribble and then looking at that scribble from many angles and finding an image in that scribble. So I'm recreating a work created by an incarcerated client who did this during group therapy. He described his life as he was doing this drawing, he's like, you know, like it's this bridge that people are just, they're doing graffiti all over it. No one is respecting this bridge. People are spitting off the bridge. Like no one is giving this bridge any love and attention. So the next image you can go to is then witness writing. So we do witness writing, and you can play it, as a way to dialogue with the image. So once the image is created, we assume that it has its own autonomy. And I ask clients to write from the perspective of the image. We do about 10 minutes of writing to really drop down, and the client begins to identify with the image and identify like the conflict experienced by the image, the needs of the image. Like, so this client particularly, by the end of the writing, was like, oh, this bridge is me. Like, no one respects me. No one understands the heavy loads I carry. People just kind of treat me like furniture. They mess all over me. Like, I get no respect. So like, it becomes then a diagnostic tool for, and you can hit the next video. He's identified the needs of the bridge. So I say, make a second image of like, what needs to happen next for this. So he creates then a second image of the community cleaning up the bridge, covering over the graffiti, planting flowers, like the bridge getting the respect it deserves, getting to do its job, getting to have a place in society, and being appreciated. So we're able to, next slide please, use this as a diagnostic tool for kind of looking at like treatment planning. Like, okay, so you're looking at these like existential themes around belonging, purpose, being valued by others, being in relationship by others, and then we kind of created a treatment plan from there. So you can go on to the next one. This is the continuum of expressive art materials going from most resistive to least resistive. We use different materials to evoke different responses from clients. Clients who are highly dysregulated and need a lot of containment, it can be really helpful to use a highly controlled material because that really keeps things contained. When a client is ready to open up and get more into the affective emotional, that's when we move into water-based, clay, things that like are able to move and spread and help connect someone to their feelings more. Next slide. Here's an example of one I do with clients. Looking at relationship with chaos versus control. We use liquid watercolors and continue to add to it, just playing with what is it like to not really be able to control a material that moves quickly. So doing this in a group therapy setting with my incarcerated clients, I'm recreating what this one client did, which was, and you can play this on a loop, as his picture got more and more messy, it started to get him really dysregulated. He's feeling a lot of frustration, anger, he's feeling out of control. And next thing you know, he just kind of dumps his whole palette out, mushes it up, crinkles it up, and then convinces the guy next to him to pour out his palette too. As we're debriefing afterwards, he realizes, he's like, oh, this is what it's like for me when I'm outside and I relapse. As soon as I do one thing wrong, I feel like I can't derail the train, and it's like I can't forgive myself. I have to make it go super out of control. And then I take everyone down with me. And the guy next to him is like, yeah, like I didn't even want to pour out my paint. So like, again, like evoking that sense of being out of control and then showing him through this contained thing, like how he generally responds to feeling out of control. Again, like diagnostic tool, really helping him see where he is. Working with symbols. So we do a lot of working through metaphor. I try to do this very spontaneously with clients. I don't put the metaphor on them, like it needs to emerge on its own. So this is a kind of a case presentation with a Vietnam veteran that I worked with, you can go to the next one, who was a victim of childhood sexual assault as well as a good deal of military trauma. He describes a lot of his 20s as being a drifter and living like a worm. And that was a word he kept using again and again, like I was living like a worm, I need nothing, I deserve nothing. I asked him to draw a picture of his support system at one point, and this is what he drew, was this worm and all of these feet. So connecting with the image itself, not asking him directly, but conversing with the image, just naming the phenomenological properties of it, of like, wow, so many big feet, these tears, like swirling, just naming those, and then letting the client say like, yeah, that worm is afraid, that worm is going to get crushed. And then reflecting back like, wow, like hard to trust. He's like, yeah, like I can't trust anyone, I have to hide. So kind of he's identifying with this worm. And go on to the next one. Later, I asked him, we were doing a meditation on finding a safe space. He immediately pops out of it and he's like, I can't meditate. It's too triggering. For a lot of trauma survivors, feeling your feelings, connecting with the body, not safe, brings up too much. So we needed a little art therapy as the boat, a little visual anchor. So I said, okay, like using the materials, show me a safe enough place. That he's able to do. He does this frog. He's like, the frog is in the pond underwater. He can see what's going on and then go back. He can come out a little bit and go back. He's like, I want to be the dragonfly who's beautiful and free, but that's not possible. At this time, we're practicing titration, like expanding his zone of proximal development, like getting outside of his comfort zone, then coming back in. Like he's doing this in his life. He's like trying new things, coming back to safety. So he's really identifying with this frog. And in later sessions, he comes back and he's telling me about risks he's taken in his life, and then he's referring to it as like, I went out of the pond for a few minutes, then I went back. So he's starting to see this as like a way to connect with, I could live like this. And go on to the next one. In a later session, group therapy session, we did self-portraits. He's very struck by this. He's 62 years old, and for months we've been working together, and he identifies as feeling like a disempowered kid, but he's really confronted by this middle-aged body that he's in. But we grieve these lost years of like, I'm not a kid, like I'm old, like I was living like a worm, but now I'm old. But suddenly he has this switch of realizing like, I'm an elder. Like that's an elder, that's a wise old owl. This guy knows something, he has something to offer. And suddenly it becomes very positively connected with the image of the owl. And kind of like puffs up and he starts carrying himself differently at this point. Next one. So this is later, he's telling a story about a time in his 20s when he was abandoned and trapped in a different state and living like a worm, having nothing. I reflected that this is a pattern that happened for him many times. It's this repetition compulsion of unconsciously creating situations reminiscent of the original trauma. And he's like, yes, and he's telling the story and getting dysregulated. And I say, okay, let's slow down, let's tell this story using non-human characters as a myth or fable. Again, like creating a little bit of safe distance, telling the story as himself too painful, but let's tell it as an animal, create a little bit of safety. He creates this image of an owl on a tiny little boat with sharks circling it. And he's getting really upset telling the story. He's like, the owl is trapped. And I'm like, this feels really familiar. And he goes, yeah, I think like, I'm trying to see if this time I can win. And he goes, no, I'm trying to see if this time I can die. At which point he, deep grief, big sobs, he's like really full body feeling the impact of all of the times that he tried to not be here anymore, feeling the grief for that kid who suffered so much. I ask him, like, once we get to the bottom of that pit of grief, I'm not interfering, I'm just letting him be witnessed, not trying to rescue him, just being with him in the grief. And suddenly it just kind of something clicked. Like I could tell his breathing changed, and I asked him, what happens next? And he stood up and he grabbed the owl, and you can hit the next slide. He smashed down the sharks, he added wings to the owl and flew it over to a rock. And he said, I don't need to be trapped there anymore. The owl doesn't need to do that anymore. That's not happening. I have wings, I can fly, I can move. And this was a really big transformation for him, feeling what it was like through metaphor to be trapped, and then feeling his own power and autonomy through the connection of having wings and realizing that like he does have choice, he does have autonomy. And I think that feeling what was possible for the owl allowed him to feel what was possible for himself. And this was a big turning point in therapy of him making a decision to stop doing a lot of self-harming behaviors and realizing what capacity he actually had. And this is an image he made towards the end of therapy of like, he is no longer choosing death, he is choosing life, he is an elder, and he is here. So that was just a very brief case study on working with symbols. I don't know if there is another slide after this. No. But basically like this transitional space of art being a place where the client can work through, experience this affective change, and emerge on the other side with a different sense of understanding. A lot more to say about art therapy, but that is my presentation, and I hope that some of you will join me for a little workshop.
Thank you, Leslie. Alicia, would you like to start? Yeah, that's good. If you want to use.
Well, good morning again. I'm going to be very brief about what music therapy is. What this talk will focus on initially is just about what the profession is and what you can expect from a music therapist, because often what I do is very misunderstood. So this will focus a little more on the advocacy piece, and then in the workshop following this, we'll actually have the interventions and things that you can view and experience and be part of. Just know that absolutely no musical talent is necessary. So if you can't carry a tune in a bucket and you don't have a rhythm in your step, that's quite okay. So I am Anicia Palmer, and this is some information about me that might help you understand the lens that I view this world from. The reason why this is important is because everything that is me is what goes into my sessions and what translates into the relationship that's built in order to support someone through music therapy. You can go ahead to the next slide. When we talk about music therapy, I think it's incredibly important for us to pay tribute to the indigenous roots of this process. Music therapy, or in its modern format, is not the beginning of this profession. We have peoples all over the world who've engaged with music in a meaningful way, all the way back to 35,000 years ago and beyond. So it's incredibly important to understand that what I do is simply an outbirth of what people have inherently done across time. So music therapy as a profession began mainly in the 1940s following World War I and World War II, where trained musicians were brought into hospitals in the United States and across the Atlantic in Great Britain to treat veterans of war for their emotional and physical trauma. And later in the 1980s and into the 90s is when you start to see these major professional organizations forming, like the American Music Therapy Association, which is the governing body for the music therapists now. So we've gone from indigenous roots to a small amount of trained musicians to now over 8,000 board certified music therapists that practice in the United States today. Go ahead. So when we talk about music therapy, it's all about meeting clinical goals using musical tools. So music is the vehicle that's used to create experiences and opportunities for support for things that are non-musical. Go ahead. So the big thing is what makes me different from a musician or an entertainer. As you can see on the right side of the screen, there are a slew of qualifications that it takes in order to become a music therapist, starting with a minimum of a bachelor's degree, over 1,200 hours of field clinical training, a 6-month internship, and an expertise in several different areas besides music. The main thing that is important to understand what makes a person who goes in and simply plays for a patient to what I do is that there is a code of ethics that I follow that supports patients from being harmed and protects us as a profession. So we use 4 main modalities to address a variety of goals, whether they be psychological, social, emotional, physical, or spiritual goals. That's recreation, improvisation, listening, and composing. And what that looks like is it's all centered in what's called patient-preferred music. So whatever music the patient prefers is the music that we use. So if you can just shout out really quickly, what are some genres that you enjoy of music?
K-pop.
K-pop, what else?
R&B.
Okay.
Folk.
Folk, okay.
Jazz.
Nice. One more.
Hip-hop.
Cool. So do I know all of those things? Absolutely not. But what we can do is we can create opportunities to utilize what connects with you in these different types of interventions using those 4 main modalities. Basically, we provide the opportunity for you to tell the story using a musical means. Go ahead. So music therapists are found in all kinds of different places, and we are in every population where other healthcare workers also exist. So if you didn't know that before, chances are there might be a music therapist involved in something that you have done in the past or something that you will do in the future. And finally, what makes music therapy important is that we humanize the sanitized. Often we go into places that don't have humanity in them, and music therapy gives the opportunity for you to tell your story as a person. And all of this is fueled through agency, dignity, and a cultural humility approach that says, I'm not the expert, I'm not here to help you, because there's really nothing that I'm gonna do that's gonna change your life, but what I can do is create an environment that supports you as I walk beside you. So ultimately, my goal is to build bridges in care between the patient, their doctor, the patient and their nurse, the patient and their chaplain or their social worker or any other members of their care team in order for them to feel the most supported in their life. So thank you very much.
And here's EC's information, and it's also on our website in case you want to learn more. Oh, and I can post these slides on the website so they can use the QR codes. Right. And Kayla, thank you.
Howdy. Do y'all mind if I sit down? I think I can see everybody from here. I realized I didn't.
Should you use the mic?
Mic?
Yes, no, or are we okay?
I can try and yell.
I'm okay.
Mic is okay also. Okay. Mic it is. Is this okay? Howdy, my name is Kayla. I am a licensed professional counselor associate from Plano, Texas. I am a graduate of the Fight in Texas Aggie class of 2021. Whoop, yay, okay. And I'm going to be presenting on the therapeutic use of Dungeons and Dragons. And so this is a lot of my personal experience. I have yet to meet another person who does Dungeons and Dragons group therapy, so just disclaimer there. Next slide. I work at Aletheia Therapy in Plano. This is the house that I work at. Everyone's like, oh, it's a house, it's not a clinical setting. I'm like, yes, please come and hang out with us. Next slide. So I first got into Dungeons & Dragons here at A&M. Has anyone ever played Dungeons & Dragons before? Anyone? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so this was in like 2021, and it was right during COVID and all of that, and so I was really trying to connect with people and make new friends and find a way to like be in person with people. And so one of my friends texted our group chat, and they were like, hey, we just lost a couple members in our D&D group. Would you or anyone else be interested in playing? And I was like, sure. What is that? And they were like, it's this game where everyone sits around in a table and tells a story. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty fun. What do I need to do? And he was like, you just got to make a character. And I was like, okay, how do I do that? And he was like, just come over and we'll figure it out. And so I went over to his house, and he projected all of the stuff onto a TV screen and just like let me pick stuff. And he was like, all right, all I need you to do is go home and make a backstory. And I was like, all right. What do I need to do for that? And he was like, just write, come up with whatever you want. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm making a bard, which means it's a person who uses magic through art and music. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a Spotify playlist. And so I sent it to him, and I was like, does this count as a backstory? And he was like, sure, we'll figure this out. So he kind of combined all of the songs together. There's a lot of memory loss involved. It's been like 5 years, I still don't know everything. But the more I began playing, I finished out my year at A&M, went to grad school in Dallas for therapy, and I started doing my own therapy work there. And so the more I continued therapy, I started bringing up what we were doing in D&D and therapy. And I was like, hey, Sarah, so the other night we did this thing in D&D, and I have a lot of feelings about it. So we kind of go and unpack what was happening in the game and how that correlated with my past trauma, relationship stuff, like attachment, and there was just a lot of overlap for how little I had written down in this backstory. And so just in talking with other group members, there was a lot of connections that they'd made to their personal stuff. And so I was like, I'm also in a group therapy class. I'm also in a research class. I wonder if there's a connection between D&D and actual therapy. And I think that's next slide. Oh, yeah, that's what we just talked about. Next slide again. And so a lot of the research was very skills-based, which means like people would enter D&D groups to practice being in social relationships with other people. And what I was seeing was more of like, I wonder if we can kind of dig into that unconscious and use these characters as a way to unearth, kind of like what y'all were talking about with music and art therapy, to unearth some of these patterns that we've experienced in our relationships and, just a lot of our past experiences. And so I was like, I called my supervisor at my job, and I was like, hey, could I do a D&D therapy group just to like practice and see how this would go? And they both play D&D too. And so they're like, yeah, sure, that sounds awesome. And so next slide, we started that up. Yep, okay, next slide again, sorry, I tried to rush. And so last October, we brought a handful of people in, and I kind of did like an interview with everyone to see if like they would be a good fit, if they knew that what they were signing up for, and everyone was like, yeah, sounds good. And session 0 was sort of just like a mental health inventory. We went through everyone's triggers, like what everyone was comfortable with, what their goals were, sort of like a little mental health exam to see where everyone's at was at the very beginning. And then everyone created their characters together. And so they all got a chance to bounce off of each other and just make characters that would fit really well in a campaign setting. And after that, we kind of had like an individual session, or I had an individual session with each person. Got them into the game, and from there on, it's kind of been just like normal D&D. So we'll play D&D for 2.5 hours, and then we'll have some sort of discussion either at the end of the session, at the beginning of the session, or sometime in the middle to go over a lot of what is happening with the content, with the character stuff. And so like at any point in the game, sometimes someone will like raise their hand and be like, hey, I just made this choice and I want to apologize for how I think that affected you. And then we can kind of pause the game and be like, okay, well, why did you make that decision? How does everyone else feel about it? Do you feel like you needed an apology to the other person? And so just kind of go in and discuss things from there. Next slide. And what's been super, super crazy is that these D&D groups have followed the modality of group therapy that we tend to see. And so
my campaign is organized in sort of 8 stages, and so the first 4 stages are pretty traditional source material that you can find online or with Dungeons and Dragons books that I've kind of compiled together into an overarching storyline. And then the latter 4 stages are going to dig into each of the individual characters' backstories. And so for the first 4, that's the pre-stage, forming, and storming. And so I have 2 D&D groups now, and both of them have stormed in the exact same way at about the exact same point in the campaign. And so that looks like, in both cases, one of the players is actually like drawing their weapon to go and attack one of the other players, and then everyone kind of gets upset and they fight about it. And so, so the first couple of groups are kind of figuring out, hey, what are our roles in this? What kind of a game do we want to play? And then that storming looks like them pushing those boundaries both with me and with each other to figure out if this really is a safe place, that they can be themselves, that they can reenact these patterns, that they can have these safe relationships. And once that recovery happens, then they're able to go into that norming, performing stages. Next slide. So far, the first group has been going for about a year, and the second group has only been going about 6 to 7 months or so, and there's already so much that's happening. So I see most of the people for individual therapy as well, and this gives us something to talk about. This gives me more of an insight to how they are in relationship with each other. And they're also repeating these same patterns that they've experienced in their day-to-day lives, just like I did in my game and some of my friends did in that game as well. And so a better way to kind of explain this is I think I could do a case study or 2 and see if we can give you some more details. So to do that, I brought a D8, and so there's 8 people in both of the groups. And so if anyone would like to volunteer and roll the D8 so that we could do a case study, could I get a hand if anyone wants to? You in the yellow? Okay, here, can you hold this for just 1 second? Right up there? Oh, I'll bring it to you, you're good. Can we catch? Oh, this is tiny. Okay, just let me know what you roll. An 8. 8? Oh, good. Okay, next slide. This is awesome. Okay, I can take this back. Okay, 8 is Solaris. I'm so excited I got to talk about him yesterday when I tested this out for my practice. Solaris is a human paladin. And so a paladin is kind of like your stereotypical knight in shining armor in the game. They gain magical ability and powers from an oath that they make to some sort of higher power. And so the main thing is that the oath is the most important thing about them. And so he is an Oath of Vengeance paladin, so that kind of brings in a completely different aspect there of like revenge and anger. And that's a lot of what he's really wanting to experience in this group. And so Solaris, I'm going to use his D&D name because ethically I cannot give you his real name, is a male. He uses he, him pronouns, and he is in his 30s. He is working. He's a trauma nurse. And so his presenting problems were trauma, difficulty feeling and discussing painful experiences, and a need for a support system. His goals were he wants to explore new avenues into experiencing thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, and all of those things that brought him into therapy. He's looking for a renewed love and hope about himself and what he has to offer, new memories to point to during painful experiences, and then new ideas, strategies, conversations that he can use to help himself and others hurting around him. And so the paladin aspect of the character really was that repetition of his day-to-day life and his relational life. And so every day he is a trauma nurse. He shoves down his own emotions so that he can take care of other people, and he does the same things in his relationships, both in his marriage. That's what he had to do as a younger child with his parents because there was a lot of tumultuous experiences, and he didn't feel like he was safe or wasn't told that he was safe to experience those emotions firsthand. He had to shut it down so that other people could experience and he could go and serve other people. But the vengeance aspect of it, he said, I think it was a couple sessions ago, he was like, yeah, I chose an oath of vengeance because that's the most morally gray one. Like, it allows me to kind of take a little bit of a darker turn if I want to, or go more towards the lighter side. I can choose which one I want to do. And that's something that he was lacking in his day-to-day life. Like, obviously we can't go around and like pull a morning star out and go fight people in our day-to-day life. He can't really access that anger whenever he's trying to take care of people at work. And so this is an avenue for him to be able to experience those things in a safe place. His backstory, there was a lot of grief and loss, and that was a repetition of stuff that he's personally experienced. And then in this group specifically, he has taken more of a leadership role, which again is what he's had to do his entire life. He's had to take care of other people, he's had to serve other people, and he's had to shove himself down and be less important because taking care of others is more important. But again, as we continue to work, he's been able to get angry. He was one of the people who he drew his weapon on another player and was like, I don't want you to poison those werewolves. Don't do that. I will kill you if you do that. And the other guy was like, whoa, that's really offensive to me. And so they kind of got into it, and the whole group got to talk about it, like, hey, how do you understand both people's perspectives? How can y'all recover from this feeling unsafe literally in the game, even though it is a game? And so he's able to access that anger, and he's learning to do so in a way that doesn't feel threatening to other people. He is very honest, he's open. I can always rely again on him to talk and share. 1 minute, thank you, we're almost done. He's very introspective. He is probably the most connected person to his character and the unconscious aspects of that in this group. And again, he's working on his imperfections and knowing that he doesn't have to have it together all the time. So that's just one example of how D&D can access those unconscious patterns and attachment needs. And so I guess if you'll come to my breakout group, we'll get to make a character together and analyze that. So thank you guys.
Okay, can we all hear me? Yes, great. Thank you. Please join me in thanking our panelists again. So now we are going to break for our very exciting workshops. So we have 3 different rooms. Liz Mayer's group is going to meet in here. The 2 other groups are going to meet upstairs and over in law. We have people to take you to those spaces. So who would like to join which workshop? We have space for everyone, and we would love everyone to participate. I will also be participating. So yeah, how do we want to... Everyone want to stand up, and we'll start like milling around, deciding if we want to build D&D characters, if we want to do art-based therapy, or he wants to do music-based therapy.